First, SharePoint got a little bit of attention somewhere around mid-July. There were a couple of vulnerabilities that were actively being exploited. And Microsoft and CISA have both been pretty loud about the guidance around this to make sure people are aware of and taking immediate action on this. So you can see that the CISA article here has actually been updated multiple times in the past few weeks. And you may, if you're running SharePoint, especially a public-facing SharePoint, you're probably already aware of many of the details of this. But there's a publicly reported attack chain called Tool Shell that was exploiting two CVEs that were the original exploit that was occurring that drove this release to occur. So that was the first event. And later on, Microsoft resolved the issue, but have now since found that there are two new CVEs that are able to bypass the originals. These two had not been exploited, have not been exploited actively as of yet. But if a threat actor is already actively exploiting the first pair, for them to go through reverse engineer the chain and be able to exploit the new pair, probably not that significant of an effort. I was actually just talking with some of my colleagues just this week about this, but basically, this is one of those things that you don't really hear about in the value drivers for transitioning to cloud. But on-prem software has a lot of security risks nowadays. Between AI tools and just decryption tools in general, a threat actor can get their hands on code for a piece of software and decrypt it pretty much with a 90%, 91% or better accuracy. So once a new update is released, they can decompile that and start looking at the changes. So that's why this is such a additional risk, is to go from the original pair of CVEs into exploiting the new bypasses that Microsoft has already identified and resolved isn't going to be that big of an effort for a threat actor to go and do. It's just going to be time, really, not significant effort. So there is a high risk that this new pair will be exploited, and definitely something that if you're running the SharePoint and you've only taken action on the first pair, you would definitely want to apply the update and get the second pair resolved as well. So there's a lot of information in here about making sure that your detection guidance, making sure that you're looking for indicators of compromise, making sure your threat detection and event logging are updated in place, and looking for any signs of exploitation there. There is Microsoft's the MSRC article that came up. Microsoft had a blog post that they posted, and then a deeper level of guidance on the MSRC. I don't know why that word's not working for me today. Getting more in depth on this. So one of the pieces of guidance that they are talking about, and I just need to scroll down here to get to it, they're giving you a few steps on how to make sure that once you've updated to get all four CVEs resolved, the original pair that were exploited and the new two vulnerabilities that were discovered and fixed. You want to make sure you've upgraded, ensure your anti-malware scanning is in place, whether it's Defender or whatever vendor you're using. Make sure it's configured correctly on SharePoint and make sure that you're set up correctly. More importantly, they are highly suggesting that you rotate your SharePoint server ASP.NET machine keys. If your system were to have been compromised, this would, after you've updated the fixes and got those in place, changing these keys out will ensure that they don't have anything else that's been tampered with that could allow them to continue to bypass protections in place within your environment. So once you follow all of those steps, you should be protected against these vulnerabilities in your environment. So there is a bit of reading to do there to make sure you've gone through all the steps. There's links to the articles from both CISA and Microsoft to get you all the details you may need there. The next update that we wanted to talk about is for Exchange Server. Now, Exchange Server did have a security update this month. 5 vulnerabilities, highest rating on any of those was important. No major security concerns on that. What is, coming up on, a lot of conversations there is if you are a Exchange Server user and you have the hybrid deployment deployed in your environment, there's a couple of key changes that are coming that you want to be prepared for. And we've provided a link to the article that goes through these in more detail. So the first change is a transitioning to a dedicated Exchange hybrid application. So they talk about the details of that and what it means. The second major change is a deprecation of EWS calls and switching over to a REST-based Microsoft Graph API set of calls for Exchange hybrid. So if you're using any of those type of API calls on EWS, you'll want to be aware of this and how you would switch over to using the same on the REST-based Microsoft Graph API instead. If you go down a little bit further, there is a timeline here that talks through the transitioning of many of these capabilities. You need to be done with all of these changes and make sure that you're in place before October 2026, or you could experience disruptions to capabilities within your Exchange hybrid deployment. So if you are on an Exchange hybrid deployment, this is an article that you should make sure you've read up on and have started to implement those changes before that time frame in October. October 2026 is when the retirement of EWS in Exchange Online is going to occur. All right.